Now, you have been watching, if you watch the news or if you're on Facebook, you've heard a lot about voter suppression, states across the country trying to pass legislation in this closing of their legislative sessions that would limit and restrict the ability of voters in states across the country, black voters in particular, limiting voting, restricting Sunday voting, restricting or eliminating opportunities for mail-in balloting, all sorts of tools and tactics that have been used across the years to reduce, frustrate voters of color, particularly African American voters. Well, to give us an update on the John Lewis Voting Rights Bill, H.R. 1, and other legislation and activities is what I call the voting rights advocate superstar, none other than attorney Barbara Unwine.
Hi, Rainbow Push family. What an honor it is to talk to you today about what's going on with voting rights. You've been hearing a lot. You saw all the national news. That's all they've been talking about since this weekend, because on this weekend, Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia announced that he is not going to vote in favor of the For the People Act. Well, you said, what does that mean? And I'm going to tell you what it means. Also, you heard the head of the GOP in the Senate, that is Senator Mitch McConnell, who used to be the majority leader, but thank God he no longer is because of his bad policies on voting rights, announced that he is opposed to the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. And you said, wait a minute, there's two of them. Yes, there are two major pieces of legislation addressing voting. And what does it mean that we have this going on? So I want to just bring you up to date and to explain what these two different bills are and why. Now, as you know, in 2020, we had COVID, we had a pandemic. We still do, but we had a pandemic that affected the electoral process throughout the nation during the presidential elections and the primaries, and of course in Georgia for the Senate runoffs. But what happened was a shock to everybody. Because we fought for voter options, that meant we fought to have, vote by mail. We fought for, broader absentee balloting. We fought to make sure that there were drop boxes. We fought to expand, where polling sites were located. We fought for drive-in voting. We fought for so many ways to encourage and to facilitate people's ability to vote during this pandemic. And as you know, a lot of people took their lives in their hands and they voted in person. Well, the shock is everyone thought that meant that the voter participation would be greatly reduced. But instead of it being reduced, 17 more million people, that's 17 million more people voted in 2020 than voted in 2016. Why did that happen? Because it turns out that voters love it when you make it easier for them to vote. And that's what we did. And remember that groups like RPC, the Rainbow Push Coalition, and Transformative Justice Coalition, which I head up, and so many other organizations took on it as our personal responsibility to outreach the voters and to educate them. And we did it well. The states didn't do it. Let me be clear. Around this country, a lot of states did nothing and did not help voters. But we, the groups on the ground, even though we couldn't have mass meetings, even though we had to work virtually and knowing that a lot of our people are not on the internet and don't have access to Zoom, etc., we still made it happen through telephone, through writing, through mailing, and people got educated and they participated in numbers unprecedented. Think about this. In Philadelphia, 93% of all Black voters are registered for 2020. Think about this. During the Senate runoffs in Georgia, 93%, that's right, that 93% number of all Blacks in Atlanta voted. So these are the kind of unprecedented participation that we celebrate. But guess what? A whole lot of folks hated it. They got upset because look at the consequences of it. The consequences of it was that in Georgia, you had 2 new senators, one Black, one Jewish, and folks didn't like that. Instead of those conservatives that had been elected before. In Georgia, you saw the state switch political alignments from red to blue. You saw in Arizona the same thing. You saw, in Pennsylvania, you saw all of these consequences of political, transformation because of all the voting that happened. And instead of embracing it and saying, isn't this wonderful that our democracy is working, that people are turning out, they said, no, we're going to stop it. We're going to use every single piece of voter suppression methodology that we can to stop it. So around the country, this year in 2020, we have 48 states in which 369 pieces of voter suppression legislation has been introduced. 22 pieces of legislation has passed in several states, over 12 states. And we still have actively moving a lot of legislation in several more states. So, and what are they doing? You said, Barbara, what does this legislation mean? This is bills and acts that will regulate how you vote. And guess what they're doing? They're cutting early voting. They're eliminating souls to the polls voting on Sundays. What else are they doing? They are getting rid of vote by mail, absentee balloting. They're making it either harder to do so or getting rid of it. What else are they doing? They're reducing polling sites so that there are less places to vote. What else are they doing? They're getting rid of, eliminating drop boxes, prohibiting drop boxes, or saying you can only have 1 per county, or saying you can only have them during working hours. What's the purpose of a drop box? Is for people to be able to put their ballots in after they worked, after during weekends, and times of their convenience. So they're purposefully doing this, and they're prohibiting automatic voter registration. They're prohibiting all of these things and requiring strict voter ID. But what are they allowing? Think about this. They're allowing challengers to come to the polls who are from out of state, out of county, never met you, and say that you're not a legally registered voter. What else are they doing? In Oklahoma, they actually have the nerve. I mean, this is bad. They actually have the nerve to have a bill that says that if you are registered, that they're going to wipe the entire voter registration list clean, that no one in Oklahoma will be registered, that every single voter, including the governor, everyone will have to re-register. Why are they doing that? To destroy our democracy. Why? What else are they doing? They're also saying in Georgia and in Florida and in Texas that if you help people in line who have been standing in line waiting for 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 hours, not because of anything they did wrong, because the counties in the state didn't provide enough voting places, and that they're now standing in line forever, that you can't give them food or water. That's how bad this is. So, and I just went through a few of them. There's so many others, like they're cutting voter education, making it hard for local county boards to educate voters. They're taking over boards of elections and putting who they want into those spots. There's so much wrong, so much evil that's happening with this wave of voter suppression. So our answer to that wave has been these 2 amazing bills. I call them bookends on the library shelf. Think about, a bookcase. Think about the bookcase having all your rights to vote all your rights to, polling place, to be registered, to have your ballot counted, all of your rights on that bookshelf. And then and then you got the bookends to make sure your rights, that the books don't fall off the shelf. And one is HR 1, S1, and it's called the For the People Act. And the For the People Act does something so needed. It says that every single state in the union, when it has a federal election, has to follow the same rules and regulations, that they got to have 2 weeks of mandatory voter early voting. They have to not have strict onerous voter ID. They have to allow for automatic voter registration. They have to allow for same-day voter registration. They have to allow people who are formerly incarcerated and are out of jail, meaning they've served their time, they must automatically restore them to the voter registration rules list. Guess what that means? That means over 6 million people will be able to vote without having to worry about being thrown in jail because they were confused about their rights, or worry about the fact that they may be turned away when they get to the polls, who have the worry, am I on probation? Am I off of parole? Am I under supervision or not? It just takes away all those problems, right? And it does so many other good things that encourages voters, making sure that nobody has to wait in line for more than 30 minutes. Think about that. All these good things that this bill does. And it means that if you're in Maine, if you're in Chicago, if you're in Wisconsin, if you're in California, if you're in Colorado, if you're in Oregon, if you're in Florida, if you're in Georgia, if you're in Texas, you have the same identical rights at the minimum. The only things the state can do is do more, do better. They can't do less. So that's the beauty of S1, and that's the beauty of the For the People Act. The second one, on the other end of the bookcase, is what we call HR 4, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. Now, these two bills have one thing in common: John Lewis. Most people don't know that John Lewis wrote the first 300 pages of what's called the For the People Act. So when you hear me talking about all those rights that would be uniform, that's what he envisioned. That's what he knew the voters in this country needed. HR 4 is something altogether different, because what HR 4 does is it says that any state with a history of discrimination in voting, or states are just required to not discriminate in voting, so that any new proposed rule, practice, or procedure for voting, it has to be pre-cleared, meaning it has to be reviewed and approved by either the Department of Justice or by the district court in Washington, D.C., the federal district court. So what does that mean? That means that pre-clearance, as we call it, stops before it even can become law, before it can even become, let's say, implemented as law, any bad laws. So, and any racially discriminatory laws. So if you say, for example, that as they did in Georgia, a couple of years ago, that only certain counties were going to be prohibited from keeping their polling places open past 7 o'clock. All those counties that they were prohibiting were Black. And guess what? In Cobb County in Georgia, they had the nerve to close out of their 9 polling places, they closed 5 of them. Every single one of them was either in a Black community or in a Latino community. So, either brown or Black, those were the only ones they cut. That's what you would go to court and challenge under the Voting Rights Act. And that's where, if they put such a proposal, before they could even do that, they would have to get that pre-cleared and approved, which meant it would never be approved. And that's why you need the HR 4. One act sets standards. The other act catches bad criminal efforts to steal the vote. It's criminal to block the vote. It's criminal to try to steal the vote. So that's the beauty of HR 4. So you need both. You need standards that people can rely on, and you need to be able to stop bad racially discriminatory laws. So that's the beauty of the bookshelf, 2 bookends. Well, they're under attack. So what do you do? You're saying, well, didn't McConnell said he's not supporting either one? That's correct. The Republicans, too many of them, have decided to dig in their heels and support voter suppression because they don't want a real democracy where people of color, women and young people are participating freely. They don't want that. They want what they said, a shrunken, small electorate. And that's what they're trying to achieve. They want to throw us off, too many of us, off the voting list. And you're saying, wow, is this true? Of course it's true. I wouldn't say it otherwise. But I do want to say to all of you, the good news is that in your hands is power. You can right now make yourself heard and make a difference in this fight. Call your senators, your U.S. senators at 202-224-3121. That's 202-224-3121. And just say that you want to talk to your senator, and they're going to ask you what state you're from. And they're just going to send you straight over to your senator's office. And so you don't even have to worry about, oh, do I know their names? Do I remember it correctly? You can just call the switchboard and they're going to put you straight through. And I want everyone listening, do that, because in the next couple of days, think about this. We are sitting on the 58th anniversary of Fannie Lou Hamer's being jailed and beaten within an inch of her life for trying to register Black voters. Remember, it's a brutal and ugly story, but they beat her so bad that it caused permanent liver damage, caused clots to her brain, clots over her eyes, blood clots, caused all kinds of illness that would affect her all her life. And it's no accident that she died before she even saw the age of 60 from all of this maltreatment. So we're saying to all of you right now, wherever you are, in honor of Fannie Lou, because they beat her and kept her in jail for 4 days. And it was from June the 9th through June the 12th. In her honor, let's make these calls. In her honor, after the 12th has passed, let's make these calls. In honor of everybody who's fought for our rights, but in honor of your children, your grandchildren, the future, for yourself, we deserve a better government. We deserve a government that looks like the people who constitute this nation. We deserve a better situation. So let's do this, people. Let's say to our senators, when we call them, vote yes for S1, for the People Act. Vote yes for HR 4. And when you call on HR 4, you should call your Congress people too, because that bill has yet to be introduced. They're already, laying in wait to kill it with their knives unsheathed, but we're not going to have it. We're going to do the work that we have to do. So also, ask for your Congress people, and they're going to tell you, what's your zip code, and you're going to give it to a switchboard, same switchboard, 202-224-3121, same switchboard. And they're going to ask you what your zip code is, and then they're going to send you automatically over to your congressperson. So don't worry about if you don't remember their name. And you're going to tell them, move HR 4. And vote yes for the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, and continue to push everybody to vote yes for the People Act. So that's what we can do. That's who we are. But we're going to be in the streets. We're going to be doing so many things to make sure that these acts become law, because it's our generations. And I said generations. It's our obligation to stand in the breach. It's our obligation to fight for voting rights right now, today, not tomorrow, right now, today, and every single day until these two bills become law. And as I leave you, also support the DC Emissions Act. It's called S51. Let's make DC a state. Let's make sure that 712,000 people aren't denied a senator, a voting member of Congress. Think about it. There are more people living in the District of Columbia than there are living in 2 other states that have senators and congresspeople. So don't get confused. Don't think about that there's somehow some kind of far-reaching, crazy idea. This is, I mean, Vermont has less population, so does other, states. So I'm just saying to you, let's fight for justice. As your leader and wonderful visionary, the amazing Jesse Lewis Jackson Sr. would tell you, it's time for voter justice. You can make it happen. Thank you so much.